A new trade war looms. Trump's tariff tsunami. The world braces for impact. On April 2, 2025, President Donald Trump is set to unleash a new wave of tariffs on a global scale. This aggressive move, dubbed the Reciprocal Tariff policy, marks another dramatic escalation in Trump's America First trade agenda. The announcement has sent shockwaves through global markets and heightened anxieties about a potential trade war. This new wave of tariffs comes at a precarious time for the global economy. Recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic has been uneven, and supply chains remain fragile. The specter of inflation looms large in many countries, fueled in part by previous rounds of tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. With the world already teetering on the brink, many fear that Trump's tariff tsunami could push the global economy into a full-blown recession. The timing of Trump's announcement is no coincidence. It comes just days before the release of several critical reports on U.S. trade policy. These reports, compiled by various government agencies, are expected to paint a bleak picture of America's trade deficit and what the Trump administration perceives as unfair trade practices by its trading partners. The release of these reports will provide a convenient backdrop for Trump to justify his aggressive actions on the world stage. However, critics argue that Trump's obsession with tariffs is misguided and ultimately harmful to the American economy. They point out that tariffs are essentially taxes paid by American businesses and consumers. These increased costs are likely to lead to higher prices for everything from cars and appliances to food and clothing. This will disproportionately impact low- and middle-income Americans who spend a larger share of their income on goods and services. Fighting fire with fire. The Reciprocal Tariff Strategy. The cornerstone of Trump's new trade policy is the concept of reciprocal tariffs. This approach, as the name suggests, is based on the principle of retaliation. In essence, the United States will now impose tariffs on imports from countries that have existing tariffs on American goods. The rate of these new tariffs will directly mirror the rates imposed by the targeted countries on U.S. exports. The Trump administration argues that this eye for an eye strategy is necessary to level the playing field in international trade. They claim that for too long, the United States has been taken advantage of by its trading partners, who have erected high tariff walls to protect their domestic industries while enjoying relatively open access to the American market. Reciprocal tariffs, they believe, will force these countries to lower their barriers and compete on a more equal footing. However, critics of this approach argue that it is simplistic and ignores the complexities of international trade. They point out that tariffs are often imposed for a variety of reasons, not just to protect domestic industries. Some countries use tariffs as a tool to generate revenue, while others may impose them for national security or environmental reasons. Simply mirroring these tariffs without considering the underlying context could lead to unintended consequences and further escalate trade tensions. Furthermore, the reciprocal tariff strategy assumes that all tariffs are created equal. In reality, the impact of a tariff depends on a variety of factors, including the specific goods being taxed, the availability of substitutes, and the overall structure of the global supply chain. A tariff on a particular good from one country may have a negligible impact on the U.S. economy, while a seemingly identical tariff on the same good from another country could have significant ripple effects. By failing to account for these nuances, the reciprocal tariff policy risks inflicting more harm than good. The Dirty 15 targets in Trump's trade crosshairs. While the full list of countries targeted by Trump's reciprocal tariffs remains shrouded in secrecy, speculation is rife that the so-called Dirty 15 will be in the crosshairs. This group of countries, responsible for a significant portion of the U.S. trade deficit, has been singled out by the Trump administration for what it deems unfair trade practices. Though the administration has yet to officially confirm the list, experts believe it will likely include major economic players like China, the European Union, Mexico, Canada, Japan, and South Korea. These countries represent a diverse range of industries, from manufacturing and technology to agriculture and energy. Their inclusion on the Dirty 15 list underscores the sweeping nature of Trump's tariff plan and its potential to disrupt global trade on an unprecedented scale. The selection of these countries is based on a narrow and flawed understanding of international trade. The trade deficit, often touted by the Trump administration as a measure of economic weakness, is a complex issue influenced by a multitude of factors beyond tariffs. These factors include differences in savings rates, investment levels, and currency valuations. focusing solely on the trade deficit as a justification for tariffs, ignores these complexities and risks alienating key trading partners. Moreover, the Dirty 15 list reads like a who's who of America's closest allies and economic partners. Imposing tariffs on these countries will likely damage these relationships, undermining decades of cooperation and trust. This could have far-reaching consequences not only for trade but also for diplomacy and global security. The potential costs of alienating these key partners far outweigh any perceived benefits of Trump's tariff plan. So, let's dive into the economic concerns and potential impacts of Trump's tariff policies. First off, these tariffs could lead to higher prices for consumers. When the cost of imported goods goes up, it often gets passed down to the buyers. And businesses that rely on imported materials might also see their costs rise, which can, in turn, affect their profitability. Another point to consider is the potential for trade wars. Other countries might retaliate with their own tariffs, which could hurt American exports. This kind of back and forth can create a lot of uncertainty in the global market. Moreover, some industries might benefit from the tariffs. For instance, domestic producers who compete with foreign imports might see a boost. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword because, while some sectors may gain, others could suffer. Lastly, it's important to think about the long-term effects. Tariffs can disrupt supply chains and lead to inefficiencies in the market. Over time, this could slow down economic growth. So in summary, while the intention behind these tariffs might be to protect domestic industries, the broader economic impacts can be quite complex and far-reaching. Global trade tensions began to escalate as countries responded to Trump's tariffs. Nations like China, the European Union, and Canada imposed their own retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods. This tit-for-tat approach led to increased uncertainty in international markets and strained diplomatic relations. The ripple effects were felt across various industries, affecting businesses and consumers alike. Trump's strategy was rooted in his belief in the art of the deal. He viewed tariffs as a negotiating tool to bring other countries to the bargaining table. By imposing tariffs, Trump aimed to secure more favorable trade terms for the United States. His approach was unconventional and often criticized, but he argued that it was necessary to protect American interests and jobs. The long-term effects of Trump's tariff policies on U.S. trade policy remain a topic of debate. Some argue that these measures could lead to a more protectionist stance, while others believe they might prompt a re-evaluation of global trade agreements. The impact on the U.S. economy, manufacturing sector, and international relationships will likely be felt for years to come. Navigating the uncertain waters of global trade requires careful consideration and strategic planning. Businesses must adapt to changing tariffs and trade policies, while governments need to balance domestic interests with international obligations. The future of global trade is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the landscape has been irrevocably altered by the policies and actions of recent years.